Welcome to GAB with ALisa Profiles. Thanks for joining us. We have a wonderful guest today. We're going to talk about a number of things that I know you're going to find inspirational and encouraging as well. You know, every time I do one of these programs, when I profile an individual from our community, I try to think of one word to sum up the whole show. And believe me, with the people that we've had on this program, that's really hard to boil it down to just one word. But I think the word we're going to use for our guest today is duty. We're going to profile Barbara Ives, the Dean of Academics at St. Mary's Riken. And Barbara has an incredible background that's all about duty. We'll get to know Barbara and more about her history and more about what's coming up for women as well as we do GAB with ALisa Profiles on MetroCast Channel 10 coming up next.
Moving into a new area is always tough, especially when it comes to problems in your home. We were unpacking our last box when our heat stopped working. I had no idea who to call until a neighbor suggested Booth's Heating and Air. And from the first phone call, right up to the final quality check, I was given professional customer service. Well, now we're all settled in, and next time, I'll know exactly who to call.
I'm Wayne Booth with Booth's Heating and Air Conditioning. Thank you for your business.
Why smart people buy their used cars from Jack Fitzgerald. Reason number 1.
The most important reason to buy a car from us is our 138-point inspection report. We check the car out thoroughly, and we put a copy of that report in your glove compartment so that you know as much about that car as we do before you buy it.
Shop our entire used car inventory at fitzmall.com.
And that's the Fitz way. There's just no better way to go.
You're watching GAB with ALisa Profiles on MetroCast Channel 10. Thanks so much for joining us as we welcome our guest. We profile today Barbara Ives. Barbara, thanks for agreeing to join us.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you for inviting me.
A lot of people in St. Mary's County and our community know you as the Dean of Academics, the face for St. Mary's Riken, also know you for your work with the Pax River Naval Air Museum.
Yes.
So you're very involved in the community, and we want to thank you for all that you do, seen, unseen, heard, and unheard. But I wanted to take an opportunity because I know a little bit about your history, and I'd like to share it with our viewers because you have a very unique history where you've come to this position in life. Let's talk about, first of all, you served in the military, in the Navy for 27 years.
Yes, 27 years.
That's great. And you also went through the U.S. Naval Academy, and that is a big story in and of itself. It's also American history. It's historical.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was very fortunate. I was in high school in the 70s, and in the 70s, I went to Neshaminy High School in Langhorne, Pennsylvania. It was the third largest high school in the state of Pennsylvania at the time. So my graduating class was about 1,200 students, and with a school that big, you think there was a lot of opportunity for women. Well, in the case, that was before. Well, that wasn't necessarily the case. In my high school, third largest in the state, there were only 3 sports that women could participate in. Only 3 sports.
In this enormous high school?
Enormous high school. 1,200 students in my class. Now, granted, this was a high school. It was 10 through 12 because it was a high school and junior high school at the time, where we have middle school now. So that's all changed. But still, huge school, 3 sports for women. It's volleyball, badminton, and tennis. That was it. So if you didn't play those sports, you really didn't participate in sports. And in my case, I was in the band. I played a clarinet, and I ended up being band president, which was a great honor. My band was huge, 300 instruments. So we traveled to Ireland for St. Patrick's Day Parade, and then we traveled to New Orleans for Mardi Gras, and then we did the Macy's Day Parade in New York, which was great for Thanksgiving. So it was a good opportunity for leadership in that area. But when I was in high school, opportunities to do much more than Navy ROTC wasn't really available. So I applied to Cornell University. I was into Cornell, planning to go to Cornell. I was a junior at the time. I'd done my work early. My plans were set. And then my guidance counselor said to me, Barbara, have you considered applying to the Naval Academy or any of the academies? And I said, well, no. I didn't realize that women could do that. And she said, well, Congress changed. Congress changed the law. And what happened was that in the mid-'70s, a lot of pressure on Congress to continue the trend for women equality. In the 60s, we had women equality come about with a lot of work from a lot of folks that had done that work. So the trend was to continue women equality. And it seemed that the next step was to have women at the service academies and integrate women into the military more, into a leadership position. So Congress said yes, and so under the presidency of Gerald Ford, the next year, 1976, they allowed women in. And she said, why don't you try? And I said, okay. So I did all the work, did all the application process. I had to get a nomination. You had to. So Congressman Beaster was my congressman for my area, and he had 5 spots available.
Okay.
And so primary, first alternate, second alternate, third alternate, and fourth alternate. You're allowed so many spots per elected representative. And so there was a lot of pressure on him to have a woman in because it was the trend. So I ended up being selected 4th alternate.
Wow.
So that took a lot of pressure off him. He had selected a woman to go, but it was 4th alternate.
So let's take just a moment and talk a little bit about the atmosphere surrounding that appointment and surrounding that whole time frame in our culture in the United States, because women have a lot of opportunities today. I have 3 daughters, and they are all over the board with wonderful opportunities, sports, athletics, education, science, technology, the whole 9 yards. But when you were going through school, the United States culture, the community culture, the legislative, executive culture was much different. So what were some of your observations as you were applying to go to the Naval Academy? What were your observations culturally, and what did it feel like at the time you didn't realize you were going to be a member of American history, but what was it like at that time? What did it feel like?
Well, I tell you, it was a little overwhelming, ALisa, initially, because a lot of folks thought I was applying for an MRS degree, to find a man. She's going to go to the Naval Academy to find a man. So that was a little unusual to hear those sorts of things. And then other folks felt that I was going to the Naval Academy because I was a woman's liver. That was that trend.
Right.
And a few other things were opinions of why I was going there, but not once did anyone ever say she wanted to go to the Naval Academy to be a leader. No one said that. They didn't think about that. And I think that was the thought with where women were in society at the time. That was just the trend. For women, there were really very, very few women at that point in any sort of leadership position in our country. It was all a very male-oriented leadership structure. So this was a new trend of thought. I mean, this was new, having women go into the service academies to lead men. New thought. So there was a lot of pushback.
I can imagine.
A lot of pushback.
I can imagine there was, and it would have had to almost be disheartening sometimes. And I think that's a common thread with people that I've interviewed on this program that have done different and amazing things, is you reach a place where you have to decide to go forward with only your own impetus, if you will, your own self-esteem and what have you. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to examine that a little bit more, and then kind of pick out of you and pull out, if we can, what made you get through it, if you will, because here you are today. Obviously, you did a wonderful job. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to continue profiling Barbara Ives, currently the Dean of Academics at St. Mary's Riken here in St. Mary's County, but also one of the first women to graduate from the Naval Academy. What an inspiration. We'll be back in just a moment. You're watching GAB with ALisa Profiles on MetroCast Channel 10.
We believe everyone should be treated with respect, and our customers will tell you that. We have low, no haggle, no hassle, posted prices. All the anxiety is gone out of buying a car.
My name is Cheryl, and I will buy every car until I can't drive from Fitzgerald Auto Mall. I would recommend this place to anybody because they were all about me, not about closing a deal. I stopped worrying and I started thinking about me, the car that I want. I love telling my story because it's a story that I want everybody to hear.
Changing times brings changing needs. That's why, for your convenience, Booth's Heating and Air have extended their service hours to 10 hours a day, Monday through Saturday, at regular service rates. Through rigorous training classes and courteous business practices, Booth's technicians always go above and beyond to provide you with award-winning customer service that you can trust. Booth's Heating and Air, serving the Southern Maryland area since 1993.
You're watching GAB with ALisa Profiles on MetroCast Channel 10 as we profile Barbara Ives, one of the first women to go through the United States Naval Academy. Now, it's important that we stop for just a moment and really take in what that means, because in 2014, it's an everyday occurrence. Women have plenty of opportunities and plenty of different things that they can apply themselves to. But when you went through, Barbara, you mentioned earlier that you had received the congressional appointment, but people were not jumping for joy about women going to the Naval Academy, and you had it coming at you from all sides, but you did it anyway. So let's talk about that. What was life like on a day-to-day basis at the Naval Academy, and how did you find it within yourself to go through, and not only to get through, but to succeed and be accomplished in your successes?
Okay, that's a good question. But first I'd like to set just a little bit of a setting that we went into. Congress gave the all the military academies just 1 year to get ready for women.
Okay.
So a short 12-month time frame to say, okay, we've passed the law, and in July of 1976, they're going to be there. So anything that, when you have an establishment that's been in existence for years, to go undergo a change like that, that's going to cause a lot of friction. Change causes friction. So they had to change policies, change the structure of the buildings to accommodate women lavatories and toilets and all those neat things. They had to have special dorm rooms set up for women. They had to do all these changes. Two, they had to train the midshipmen that the women were going to be there, and they had to talk about policies with that, and instructors as well. So it was a huge, huge, huge endeavor to do all that. So that caused a lot of discontent among a lot of the hierarchy, or the folks who'd been in the Naval Academy or at the Naval Academy for a while. So when we came in, not a lot of the upperclassmen midshipmen were very happy to have women coming in, because we were changing the culture of the academy, and a lot of folks felt, well, we can't fight, they can't go into a combatant role, so why even let women get in? So that was a lot of the challenge to overcome. So on I-Day, which is the first day, this was July 7th, 1976, women came into the service academies, not just Naval Academy, military, but the Military Academy and Air Force Academy as well. So we all were there about the same time. In my case, I was in second company, and my company at a brigade of 36 would be the first to march out from Halsey Fieldhouse into Bancroft Hall. So we were the first company with women. And my roommates, my one roommate was the first African American woman at the Naval Academy. My other roommate was an Asian woman, and then me. So we had 3 in our company. So when we marched out, we attracted a lot of attention, especially since my roommate, my roommate Liz, she's barely 5 feet tall, and she had this huge suitcase to carry. And the academy made a requirement that all women bring their personal goods. So you had all this stuff you had to bring. And she was dragging the suitcase. She's barely 5 feet tall, dragging the suitcase. And the squad leader, the upperclassman, saw her struggling there and picked up the suitcase and carried it for her. So the media went nuts on that.
Of course.
So that kind of set that was very challenging to manage with that first impression with the media, with the suitcase, with the squad leader carrying it. So we as a company had a lot to deal with, but it worked out fine. But the way we got through it, and the way all of us got through, we entered with 81 women, graduated 55, but all of us got through. It was just true grit. You went through each day. You were going to do the best you could. Your goal was to graduate, so you did whatever you could to get through the day so you could reach graduation. One of my biggest challenges was, because I wasn't an athlete in high school, I had to meet the physical requirements. So that was a big challenge for me. So one of the preps I did, I was practicing running every day, and that's one of the requirements. You have to run a mile. And you have to run a mile, do so many sit-ups, do so many pull-ups. So they modified a few things for women because they knew the physical limitations were different. But you still had to do that stuff.
Right.
And I had to learn to do that stuff. So my squad leader was a great guy, and he spent his Sundays working with us, 3 women. Now my roommate, Janie, was a great athlete. She was a very, very good athlete. She was a judo black belt in judo, so she was very tuned into learning this stuff a little easier than us. But
smart.
Yeah, she was very smart. And so we learned this stuff, and we learned to run the mile, and we learned to climb walls and do obstacle courses and all that neat stuff in a short period of time. So,
and I like the way that you phrased the athletic part is you learned how to do it. And a couple of things that caught my attention is you said really and truly it was true grit. I also call it being pig-headed. I'm going to do this and I'm going to get through this. But it was nice to hear that you also had some pockets of people that were not necessarily in tune with culture, and they said, we're going to help you, we're going to get through. And I know a squad leader has a duty to take care of the people in the squad. And so their success is based on their squad's success as well.
Yes.
But it was nice to hear how fondly you refer to your squad leader as far as working with you and teaching you and so forth. Women in the military have come so far. We now have women that are in combat positions. As a matter of fact, we spoke to a young lady, we profiled her a couple of weeks ago, and she was in the military in what was at one point a combat position. So it's exciting to see what is going on with women. We're going to take a quick break now, but when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about your experiences where you realize this is what I'm going to do regardless of what's going on. And I also like to get your view on what it's going to look like for women in the military, and if you have a piece of advice for young girls today that are watching. So that's a lot on your shoulders. So we're going to do that when we come back in just a moment as we continue to profile Barbara Ives on GAB with ALisa Profiles on MetroCast Channel 10. We'll be right back.
Moving into a new area is always tough, especially when it comes to problems in your home. We were unpacking our last box when our heat stopped working. I had no idea who to call until a neighbor suggested Booth's Heating and Air. And from the first phone call right up to the final quality check, I was given professional customer service. Well, now we're all settled in, and next time, I'll know exactly who to call.
I'm Wayne Booth with Booth's Heating and Air Conditioning. Thank you for your business.
Why smart people buy their used cars from Jack Fitzgerald. Reason number 1.
The most important reason to buy a car from us is our 138-point inspection report. We check the car out thoroughly, and we put a copy of that report in your glove compartment so that you know as much about that car as we do before you buy it.
Shop our entire used car inventory at fitzmall.com.
And that's the Fitz way. There's just no better way to go.
You're watching GAB with ALisa Profiles on MetroCast Channel 10 as we continue to profile Barbara Ives, the Dean of Academics at St. Mary's Riken, with an incredibly interesting and American historical story. Barbara was one of the first women to graduate from the Naval Academy, and after that you went on to have a very storied career in the U.S. Navy, 27 years. We've spent a lot of time talking about what it was like in the Naval Academy. It did open some doors. Culturally, it was a harder time because women were just getting afforded some of these opportunities, but you served in a couple of really unique programs and then continued through the military for 27 years. So talk about that.
Well, upon graduation, I went to Fleet Numerical Oceanography Center in Monterey, California, and the interesting part about that job was I was the first woman and officer to take the position as a quality control duty officer. So the change of having women take different positions was just taking effect, and you could see it now that we had graduated. From there, I followed a tour aboard the USNS Harkness, which was an oceanographic research vessel. Again, women couldn't go on combatant ships at the time because that's what legislature had set, but they were looking at having that process happen. So I was a part of the Women at Sea program to see if a woman could work at sea, be successful at sea, lead at sea, and to see if it would work. So essentially, a lot of the work I did was, it was recorded. They put me in a lot of positions to find out whether or not it would work to have a woman at sea, and it did. Fortunately, I have to say that was one of my most outstanding tours. I was a junior officer. I was 23 years old at the time. And I was assigned to boat department. I was the boat department lead, and boat department on a U.S. oceanographic vessel consisted of mostly the bosun's mates and enginemen. So at that time, either you joined the Navy or you kind of went to jail for most of the folks in my department. It was that group of folks. So it was a rough crowd. And here I was, introduced by the executive officer. He introduced the department to me, and they said, well, this is your new department head. So here I was, this 23-year-old, looking at this crowd of very, very seasoned sailors. So that was a very overwhelming challenge. But I can tell you, after just a few weeks of working with that group, it was, we turned things around and we truly became a very productive department. But I found, and I still believe this, that the reason that it was so productive was because they realized that I cared about them as a person. And I think that as leaders, if we do that, then no matter what the circumstances are, you will change the tide and folks will believe in you and your credibility will truly be established. In my case, I educated them because most of the folks in my department, my leading first class, he barely could read above a 7th grade level. And my chief petty officer, he did not graduate from high school, so I started educating them. We made mandatory afternoon math and English classes, and they started being promoted, and things started working out great, and that's what made that turnover. And it was a great department with a great success story, actually. And so I attribute that to a real positive influence in having women at sea based on what happened in that.
Let me ask you a question right now. Do you think that at the age of 23, when you were doing all of these things, were you really aware of what you were doing as far as what would happen to women in the military coming behind you for years and decades later? Do you think you had a real awareness of your responsibility and the amount of pressure that was on your shoulders?
You know, I really didn't. I truly did not know that pressure. I was, again, just trying to do your job, do it the best way you can. Mm-hmm. It consumes all your time when you do that. So, but the best thing was, I found out later, and many, many years later, that a lot of the input from my ship was contributed to the overall mm-hmm. change of allowing women to go into combatant positions. So I thought that was a real win-win and great learning experience for me. But win for women. This
you just absolutely nailed right on the head why I wanted to have you in on this program, because there's a common thread with the people that we've interviewed on this program. They've done big and amazing things, but they may not be, on the cover of People magazine or have billboards across the United States. There's not a TV show about you, but you've done important and amazing things. And the common thread from the people that I've talked to that have done similar things is that I don't know any different. I just did what I could do with who I am, where I was. Mm-hmm. Having said that, you were in the military for 27 years. You've gotten a view of where the military was, where it is, and I'm wondering, what do you see for women coming up in the military?
Well, I can tell you it's a great time to be a woman in the military because so many doors are opening. There's so many opportunities now that did not exist years ago. I foresee women on submarines, which back in the 80s when I graduated in 1980, that was unheard of. There's no way you would have thought to have a woman at sea under the water for 3 or 4 months with men in a very confined space. That wasn't even thinkable at the time. So just that in itself has gone incredible leaps in thought change and cultural change. Two, there's been a lot of conversation about women being put in in the Marines in frontline positions. That's a reoccurring conversation going on. And those conversations wouldn't even been talked about years ago. So I think that overall the military has done a very, very good job of changing its culture, having folks open their minds to the fact that women can be leaders just as a man, we can work alongside, we can do just as great a job as the guy next to us. So I think good things are happening, and I feel very, very, very strongly that the military have truly, truly welcomed women in a good way.
That's great. I was going to ask you as my final question, what would you say to young women to encourage them as they're going forward in life? But I think having spoken to you, I've changed my mind. I want to change the question. What would you say to young people, young men or young women? Because all of the things that you have talked about, what you did when you faced adverse circumstances, the entire United States did not think that what you were doing was a good idea. And not just your friends or your mom and dad, but the whole country. And so you face these incredibly adverse situations. You continue to go into situations that a lot of times somebody's saying, no, you can't do that, you're not going to be able to do that. So having said all of these things, the principles you've talked about are principles that cross gender barriers. They're for men or for women. So if we have a young person watching, or maybe somebody that's out there trying to find their feet, what, in a really short time frame, what is something that you would tell them to encourage them or inspire them to go and chase those big dreams, regardless of what somebody's saying?
You know, I truly and firmly believe that if you have the desire to do something, if you have the passion, that'll motivate you. So you should do whatever you want to do. You should reach whatever you want to reach. I had a student stop in my office as Dean of Academics at St. Mary's Riken, and he said to me, you know, Mrs. Ives, I don't know if I can do this. I said, do you want to go to that college? Because I really want to go to that college. He goes, but I don't know. I said, you know what, do it. If you have the drive, if you have the desire, you can do anything you want. Those folks that say you can't do it, the naysayers, don't believe them. Don't believe them. In fact, that should make you stronger. In fact, I found that. The naysayers always made me stronger, because there's an idea of that, I'm going to prove you wrong. So I encourage folks to pursue what their desires are, and can really do encourage them to be the best they can be, because that's what they want to do. And you can achieve anything you want to achieve.
Wonderful. And who knows, maybe you'll be a part of American history as well. That is so exciting. We're sitting with the living legend, if you will. Barbara Ives, thank you so much for coming in. Thanks for being so open, and I love your view, because you talk about the hard, but you don't wallow in it. You talk about the great, but you don't glory in it. I just love your whole personality and your whole approach to life. Thank you for being so open and so just easily accessible.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. A living legend in our own community, Barbara Ives. And by the way, if you see her in the halls of St. Mary's Riken, very easy to talk to. Stop and say hello. That's going to do it for this edition of GAB with ALisa Profiles. We hope that you are encouraged to chase your dreams as well. We'll see you next time. You're watching MetroCast Channel 10.